come back to the third of these levels of degrees of creation, making of self. Come back to identification. That's the one where the Buddha gave most of the meditation instructions, as far as the observing the nature of the rising of I. It's mainly to do with just observing, being able to notice it, how I develops, thought of I, with the senses, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking. But there's just being able to observe that process, recognizing that it is just development, just creation, just coming together of processes. And ideally, once we've had some development, some familiarity with developing reflection on impermanence, we get to see how fragile this sense of self really is, and how undependable, unreliable. It's like the reflections on impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, not self. They do go in sort of a progression. I think first of all, it's progression of ease. What's easier for most of us, trying to observe, say, for example, unsatisfactoriness, perhaps is a bit too emotional. You have so many investments in trying to be happy and please and be comfortable, that trying to observe its opposite is unsatisfactory. But impermanence is a little bit more abstract. But the contemplation on it requires that we review again and again and again, try to experience directly how things are changing. I mean, it's one thing to have a contemplation about it, but like in the Pali language, we translate that word from Pali as impermanence. But when I lived in Thailand, the Thai language is based upon the Buddhist language. So they've translated these Pali terms in a more, you say, user-friendly way or familiar way. The word impermanence is a bit formal, isn't it? Impermanence, And it's but in the Thai language they just say uncertain, mai nè, uncertain, unreliable, undependable. That's kind of an emotional reaction to impermanence, isn't it? If things are always changing, then you can't rely upon them. They're really uncertain. So many times, one of the teachings of Ajahn Chah, he often gave, people would be talking about going here and going there and doing this. He just said, mai nè, uncertain. It stops you in your track. Right. You get carried away here with making plans, and they say, it's all uncertain. And when you reflect upon it, you notice, how many times have your plans worked out? Yeah? We get all these concepts and ideas, we got to do this and do that and work like this and like that, but how many times does it actually work out that way? So uncertain. All you can do is kind of make a general plan of things and then step back and allow conditions to unfold on their own. Be very flexible, adaptable. And as I mentioned, these two main themes depends upon the individual. Some people find it easier maybe to observe the senses. The senses are very direct. We use the senses all the time. The moment we wake up, even at night, we're still thinking, we're still dreaming and thinking. And then first thing in the morning, open your eyes, and sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, thought goes on. Very, very direct. So if you can bring some awareness to the sense perception process, you get to see how we create the sense of self. And many times, the distortions of perception, lead us astray. You get the wrong perception of things. If somebody says something and you only hear half of it, jump to conclusions. And if you're in a bad mood and somebody says hello to you, well, what do you mean hello? If you're in a good mood, well, hello. Exactly the same word, but the way you perceive it, your mood, and then how you respond to it. Sometimes if you react very negatively to it, you might get another reaction. A negative one, a reaction to the reaction to the reaction. But there was a story in the scriptures where somebody came to the Buddha. There's the story of Bahia, and he came to the Buddha I guess late in life, he was very elderly, and he'd heard about the Buddha, so he made an effort to come and see the Buddha. And he went to the Buddha, and the Buddha was on alms round. So he said, Buddha, teach me something. So I'm on alms round, I'm alms round. It's not the right time yet. Wait till I give a teaching. No, I must have a teaching right now. So anyway, when somebody is very persistent, they say when he asks the Buddha 3 times, the Buddha has to respond. So the Buddha was, he wasn't sort of like in the appropriate teaching conditions, so he gave him a very short, succinct teaching. Maybe he also realized that this person was very ripe for the teaching. So he just gave him a very, very short teaching, very, very succinct, and the result of it, the person was enlightened from the end of it. So, you ready? No guarantee. Maybe you aren't desperate enough. So he just said to this person, he said, in the seeing, just the seeing. In the hearing, just the hearing. In the senses, just the sensing. In that way, there will be no coming and going, no interpretation, no opportunity for the arising of self, if you like. Just seeing. Not I seeing, there's only seeing. And with the reality of now there's physical object, there's the organ, there's seeing, consciousness. That's it. No more thinking about it, no more, I see. No, just the seeing, just the hearing, just the smelling, tasting, touching, just the awareness of thought, of mental activity. That's all there is. Stop right there. No building of I anymore. So can you do that? Sometimes, maybe. When you notice, you're looking around, for example, or maybe sometimes, first thing in the morning as you open your eyes, just see if you can just stay with just the seeing. A little bit, in the morning, maybe you're not quite aware yet, not enough mindfulness yet. But sometimes you can experiment with your senses. I mentioned to some people maybe there's 6 senses and 7 days a week, right? Just try maybe 1 day a week. Try and focus on one sense. Monday is eye day. Tuesday is ear day. Try and be aware of just focusing, giving more attention to just that one sense. Just what you see today. Just try and stay with the seeing. And maybe, at least you maybe catch it when the eye arises. I see that, I want that, I like this. Oh, right, back to seeing again. Just with the seeing, the hearing, the smelling, tasting, touching, thought. And you got an extra day for homework, 7 days. And each person, I think we have to experiment a little bit because each person is different. The Buddha gave quite a range of meditation themes and practices and techniques. And some people, they have different techniques work for different people. Usually we hear the very basic ones, watch the breathing. There are 40 different meditation themes. Most of them, other ones are more refined or a little bit more specialized, if you like. But it may take some experience with the basic meditation themes first, and then maybe you find it helpful to bring in other ones. Like the first practice of focusing on breathing, then maybe you find that they're coming up in your mind are some particular stubborn negative mental states. If you notice that, these negative mental states are coming up, then maybe it's a good sign, it's a good occasion to try to practice the exercise in friendliness and try to be more friendly to it, this negative states of mind. Still, you use breathing as the main meditation theme, as a theme for calming the mind. Then you can bring in practice of friendliness sometimes, and perhaps it can help to resolve that negativity, for example. You may find that when you're able to clear some of the disturbances of calm, these repeating states of mind, these habits, you can clear some of them, then the mind is naturally calm. We can resolve some of your habitual negativity, then there's more space in your mind, sort of naturally calm then. So you can build a deeper level of calm. But invariably what happens is that, the deeper levels of calm reveal different levels of our being, if you like. More unconscious levels of we haven't been noticing before. Slowly become more conscious, become more aware of them. There's an ongoing process of working through them. That was the theme of my last book, was about the 5 hindrances. And what I suggested was that rather than read through the book from cover to cover, first of all, look in your own mind and try to observe what is the most prominent hindrance at this time. Is it sensual desire? Is it ill will? Is it sleepiness and dullness, restlessness and worry, or is it doubt? These are the 5 main hindrances, obstructions of the mind or hindrances. I mean, these are the 5 main ones. When I observe my own mind, there's 5,000, but they go into these 5 different energetics, if you like. Sensual desire is the reaching out, and ill will is pushing away. Sleepiness and dullness is collapse. Restlessness is too much energy, being distracted and disturbed. And doubt is paralysis. Don't know. There's sort of 5 basic energetics. So you can put other ones into it. Envy, fear, I would say, is to do with doubt. We are afraid of what we don't know. So it's doubt, not being clear about things. Jealousy, a bit more restlessness. Type of aversion to jealousy and envy. So if you have to notice other, particular specialized, your own particular specialized hindrances, you can probably put it into those 5 general categories. And then the Buddha gave quite a variety of ways to deal with them, other meditation techniques, ways to deal with them, way to work with them. The title of the book is Working with the Hindrances, rather than trying to get rid of them. We're going to need to find out what the fundamental cause is behind them before we really can uproot them then, rather than just kind of cover them over with more delusion then, or try and repress them. So sometimes that working with the senses can be helpful. For other people, maybe they have to work on these 5 groups of grasping. You have to learn what they are first, and unfortunately, we've had hundreds of years now, 100 and something years of Pali translation. People are still struggling with how to translate some of these terms because they don't quite fit very easily into Western language, for example. Like feeling. You know what feeling is? People usually say, ask you how you're feeling. And you don't just say pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. So in feeling in Buddhism, a translation of the word Vedana just is really the tone of the emotion, if you like. Whether you're happy or your emotion, you're happy or you're sad, is a state of mind in Buddhism. But the feeling is just a very, very basic tone of it, general tone. Pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So it takes some kind of reprogramming, if you like, or redefining in our mind feeling, Buddhist feeling. So when you're talking to Buddhists and they ask you, how are you feeling? Say, pleasant, unpleasant. People still ask that, right? Still, when you meet people, how are you feeling? Is that a Buddhist question, or is that? Well, I usually say, you really want to know? How long have you got? Tell you the long story. But these 5 groups of grasping, I mean, they are fundamental to our being. They're there anyway. So unless we can understand them, they're still working. They're still working within us all the time. Are you aware of your memories, for example? I don't know. Most people, I think, as they get older, we have a lot more memories, right? If we can remember. Yeah, we have more memories coming up. Just recently, I visited my sister, and I have some of my stuff parked up there at her house. So I went through it to try and clear it out. Piles of old photographs and letters and all kinds of things. Oh my gosh, lots of memories. But I realized, they're just memories, all gone already. Who is that guy anyway? Who's that young guy? It's more like, don't recognize him anymore. But for some people, it's very, very significant. They build their whole life on their memories. I was this and I was that and I was the other, and these memories are fading away, and these it's very unreliable to depend upon your memories. But if you recognize, okay, they just are. They're already past events. They've already happened. They're changeable. You see them in different ways, different times. There's my one of my cousins did a lot of traveling in northern Canada, and I was suggesting maybe he should write a book about it, or something or other to explain about it, because it's quite an adventure up in riding a canoe up in Hudson's Bay. And he said, well, they had all their journals and stuff got stolen, so they lost all that. But I said, well, no, it's more like your reflections upon it. What have you learned in the process? He said, well, I don't think I learned anything, or something. What's wisdom, So, but I mean, if you look at the overall picture of your life, maybe there's some common life lessons you learn through it. Not to take things so personally, not to get so caught up with things. Recognize that life is very changeable. Life doesn't live up to your expectations. But there's the feeling. Some people are very attached to the feeling level, and they got to always looking for pleasant feeling all the time. But Buddha points out, there is unsatisfactoriness. This is not just there is unpleasant feeling, but unpleasantness is also a theme, that things are not perfect. They're incomplete. Our life is incomplete without including death. So how many people can include that in their life? Huh? We just think, oh, life, this is it, this is life. And oh, death, oh, no, not me. But life is only complete when you bring in death. Right? Life will always end at death. So you should include in your story of life death too, and then it's complete. But how many of us can do that? I mean, it's not experienced yet, but but how many of us resist even thinking about it? And yet it's on the table. It's on the table. We're all heading that way. It's one of the meditation themes actually the Buddha gave, reflection on death. And I know in a Western context, they usually don't talk about it in public because people are a little bit nervous, never contemplated it. But it is a Buddhist theme. And there's kind of an irony in it, I guess you'd call it an irony. The same as reflecting upon unsatisfactoriness. There's kind of I guess you'd call it an irony or something, because when I was at UBC, my third year, I took a course. I've been already in Asia and learned meditation. Then I came back, I traveled in Asia, came back to UBC, and then I thought, I should study about these different religions I passed through. I went through Catholic countries and Jewish countries and Arab countries and Hindu countries and Buddhist countries. And I always noticed that the religion really had a strong influence on the culture and the mentality of the people. Going from a place like Pakistan to India, very different culture, totally changing. Wow, it is a different country. It's like a different planet. Going from India to Sri Lanka, my goodness, what's different here? I didn't even know Sri Lanka was a Buddhist country. But interesting enough, when I went to Sri Lanka, I just got this feeling, suddenly this is familiar to me. Must be my past life, Yes. In India, it was very interesting, but I didn't feel much connection there. And then going into Sri Lanka, which is just across the water, wow. And it was, it's grounded in Buddhist culture. And so I thought when I came back to UBC, I'd just study about religions and find out what the religion is actually, because here I experienced the different cultures that had this religions, but I didn't know what the religions were. So I studied about Buddhism, and it was a little bit surprising actually, especially the teaching on the Four Noble Truths, which I just mentioned. That there is unsatisfactoriness, there is a cause, there is cessation, there is a path. And I mean, I just thought, who would talk about unsatisfactoriness as a main teaching? Boy, that takes guts, doesn't Here is somebody who didn't beat around the bush. He didn't just come in there and talk about, enlightenment, enlightenment, everybody, enlightenment. He said, there is unsatisfactoriness, folks. When you feel depressed. Anyway, I knew this about Buddhist teaching. Then I was going to Thailand, you see. I thought, oh, Thailand's a Buddhist country. It's going to be really depressing, really depressed there. And I got to Thailand, and it's the land of smiles. Are these people for real? Don't they know life is suffering? Everybody was so cheerful and so easygoing, and don't they know life is suffering? But that was the kind of irony of it. When you can open to unsatisfactoriness, it's very liberating. Of course, there was one man who came to, he used to come to the monastery, Nanachat, International Monastery, early in the morning to help the monks with the alms food, elderly man. So I came in there one day and he's there, kind of helping out, and then just to make conversation, I said, how are you doing? He turned to me and he said, I'm suffering. Oh, really? Oh, okay. I just walked away. Can't handle that. Then the next day I came in and it was really, really, here he is. He admitted he's suffering, I came in the next day and I said, what's this about suffering? He said, yeah, I've led a very unskillful life, he said, but now I come to the monastery and I'm making some good merit, and I'm washing away my bad karma, he says, and he said, life is suffering, but there is a way out of it. The Four Noble Truths. There is unsatisfactoriness is not the end of the story. Your suffering has a cause, and if you can investigate the cause, you can find a solution to it, the cessation. And the Buddha gave a very direct path, the Eightfold Path, 8 particular steps you follow to realize cessation of suffering. All very clear. So it's not, for most people, unfortunately, I come back to the West after 7 years in Thailand and everybody's so uptight, don't talk about suffering. I think when I came back, my grandmother died or something or other, and everybody's so gloomy, and my brother was getting married, but I had to go back to Thailand for the rains retreat. So my mother said, oh, you can do marriages, right? And I said, no, monks don't do marriages. She said, what do we do? I said, we do funerals. She said, oh, how morbid, how morbid. I said, actually not. The funerals in Thailand are quite peaceful and joyful events. They're sending somebody on their way. It's just perfectly natural. They accept people are going to die. And so, it's sad in a way. They won't see them again, but see you next lifetime. See you in heaven. So, but in the West, it was so morbid. People were so, everybody's in black and, crying, and what? It's perfectly natural. People could die. People die, perfectly natural. So I realized when they were Thai people, they acknowledge there is unsatisfactoriness. People die, get old, get sick. There is unsatisfactoriness in the world, but there's a cause for it and a cessation to it. And it's a fact of life. And you try and ignore the fact of life, it's very, very depressing. The more you try and resist dying, the more depressing it is. The more you refuse to acknowledge it. No, don't tell me about it, don't talk about it, no. But when you can open to it, oh yes, that's the way it is, yeah. Then you really can appreciate life, for example. You recognize, it's going to come to an end, this is it. Don't think there's something later, I won't die, I just live forever. You're fooling yourself. You're going to die, well, make use of your time skillfully right now. This is it. This is your life right now. This is all you got. Not tomorrow, not the next day, right now. So it's sort of ironic in a way that when you reflect upon impermanence and unsatisfactoriness, it's very joyful. Unsatisfactory, so what? It'll pass away. It's just as the nature of things. Natural as the leaves falling off the trees. So it's a bit hard to understand that until you contemplate it. But you can receive it, and acknowledge it in your heart, really understand it. Yes, so big deal. What's to be afraid of? What's to be afraid of? Trying to resist it is more and more suffering. People are trying to repress or push away things. It's more energy than being able to open to it, receive it. But it does require some contemplation, and usually, like I say, this contemplation from some degree of calmness of mind, because not our normal reaction, is it? Normal reaction, people say, unsatisfactory. No, I don't want to hear it. Just tell me something happy. I want to be happy, 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 happy. But is it ever always happy? Huh? Yeah. And when you can open to it, of course, there are different forms of unsatisfactoriness. Some are easy to negotiate than others. Changing conditions of the body or whatever. Others are a bit more, personal. We have life is pessimistic. Buddhism is pessimistic. Life is suffering. But I went to living in Thailand. Thai people, very, very easygoing. And are you suffering too? Are you suffering? Still a little bit? But you can laugh at it anyway, huh? Yes, yeah. You can laugh at suffering. rather than get angry with it or frustrated with it, you can laugh at it. It's just the ups and downs of life. Like I say, it does require some contemplation, investigation, to begin to receive it into our heart as a way of being in ourselves, not just an idea in our mind that we would like to live up to or something, an ideal, but it is an actual direct experience. So when it comes to the contemplation of no permanent self, obviously that one was, even in Buddhist time, it was obviously a difficult thing for people to understand. In the indigenous culture then, in Brahmanism it was called, which became Hinduism later, there was a belief in the Atman, the self, the kind of the soul, if you like. There was a belief in that. And that was everybody's kind of spiritual quest, was to be in union with this self, this ultimate reality. And the Buddha tried that. The Buddha practiced that. He practiced those traditional practices, and in the end, well, he was first of all, he was unhappy with the traditional approach to meditation, just samadhi practice, deep concentration. He said it wasn't the way to enlightenment. So he broke off to find his own way of meditation, and he went right back to his original source of his spiritual path, I guess you could say. He lived a very comfortable life. But then he noticed that, there was the kind of anecdotal stories say, the Buddha lived this very, very sheltered life. And then, but one day he decided to go out, look around, and he saw an old person, a sick person, a dead person. It was the first time he'd seen, what's this, what's that? Why do people get sick? Why do people get old? Because in his environment, he had all beautiful, young and beautiful people around him, surrounded by them. I just see it sort of like it's an analogy of us growing up, right? When you're a young child, maybe your grandmother dies, but normally you just live a carefree life. But then the older you get sick, and then maybe somebody dies, maybe you get sick. You start to wake up to the world, and your innocent youth becomes a bit more realistic. You become less idealistic and innocent. Begin to see more old age, sickness, and death, right? So I just take it as kind of analogy of that, but it was kind of romanticized into this stories of the Buddha going out, and even the heavenly messengers showing him these things, So the Buddha had this awakening, sort of, had this questioning anyway. Why do people die? What's, I can say maybe I had the same thoughts, what's the meaning of life? What's this all about anyway? Then he went off on a spiritual search. And he followed the traditional way of Brahmanic practice, You know, he shaved his head and went off to the homelessness and tried ascetic practices, and fortunately he found ascetic practices not very useful for spiritual practice, thankfully. We don't have to fast ourselves to death and lie on beds and nails and things like this. The Buddha taught the middle way, moderation, not self-mortification. But there's another sect in India that does follow a mortification practice, you know, and one of the groups, one of the sect of the monks, they go totally naked, but they don't survive in BC. They don't go naked. They call themselves the sky clad. They just wear the sky. Fortunately, we don't belong to that sect. You know, freeze to death in BC. Would already be extinct. And the Buddha wasn't happy with the meditation practices he did. He found them useful, but they weren't the way to practicing. So then he changed his whole attitude and just began to contemplate what is the cause of suffering. You know, I mean, as I say, he had a very, very advanced meditation. Mind was very, very calm and clear. So when he asked this inquiry, why do people die? You know, mind didn't go off and proliferate. Maybe this, maybe that, maybe they have bad genes, maybe they didn't eat properly, and blah, blah, blah. No, you could contemplate very clearly, and the cause of death was that you're born. The cause of being born was that there was an urge to exist. You know, it's like an instinct to survive, a survival instinct. And that was caused by grasping, holding on, grasping, you know, the five groups of grasping as a self, trying to grasp it, hold on to it, when it's so changeable. You know, behind that was craving, and then there was the senses, and the root of it was ignorance, not understanding this whole process of how a sense of self is developed in the first place. And we believe it is a thing and hold on to it, but everything is impermanent and changes and falls away and gets old and sick and die. We are holding on to a sense of self, and it'll be taken away from us. You know? So we don't understand that. We don't really know that right into our roots, you see. So we keep trying to create more self, preserve it. You know? So it just goes on and on and on. So the Buddha gave us reflections and tried to reflect upon, you know, impermanence. This helped us to, maybe it's not so solid as I think it is. And it isn't ultimately satisfying. It is gratifying sometimes, but not ultimately satisfying. And then there's no permanent self there. And he gave many meditations. You know, there's more meditations on different approaches to no permanent self than there is on impermanence. You know, there's about 6 different angles he gave on it. 6 different. In my book here, if I forget, maybe there's 7. I didn't swat up on that yet. The one he gave, the first one he gave was the lack of control. You know, if you really believe that this body and mind is yours, how much control you have over it? Can you say, body, don't feel pain? Body, don't get old. You can say, you know, okay, arm lift up, yeah. At least at this moment I can. Maybe in 5 years I won't be able to. So, you know, if I stay within the realm of, you know, of what I know is possible, then yes, I can do this. I can do this. I can control this body. But then if you look towards, you know, where the limitation lies, your limits, can you say to your body, you know, don't get old? You know, don't get tired. You know, you say it, but does it follow you? Don't get sick. You reach the limits of your self-control. But whoever looks there, whoever looks at that, you just usually look within your comfort zone, I say. Look around your comfort zone where you can maintain some control and some control over your life. You know, but what happens when you Step outside your comfort zone. Huh? Freak out. Huh? Then it gets very uncomfortable. Because you're losing the lack of control you really have over body and mind becomes more obvious. Yeah. When fear comes up, you go to a strange place and fear comes up. Can you control that? Yeah? Can you control your fear? I shouldn't be afraid. You're an adult. Shut up. Don't be frightened. Does your emotions respond to you? Yeah. Do you still feel fear? You shouldn't feel fear, but you do? Uh-oh. Who's that? Obviously, it's not me. It must be my other self. My alter ego or something. My shadow. So that was one of the reflections the Buddha gave to people, to try to be aware of no permanent self, and look at this limitation of your control over it. And if you can do that, you begin to recognize, oh, right, yes. So then you can begin to differentiate anyway. At the very least, when there is a relative self, okay, I can control, say, I know where certain situations are that might frighten me, so I can stay in my comfort zone where I won't get frightened. Yeah. And then usually that world becomes smaller and smaller and smaller the older you get. Your senses slow down, your mind slows down, and you're less able to adapt and be open to different changes and things. And your world gets smaller and smaller and smaller. But if you can recognize, help push limits, look at it. Then you can recognize, these are things beyond my control, but rather than limit myself to my little world, I can open to the no permanent self. Yeah? It's a reality too. It doesn't have to bother you. It doesn't have to be a big challenge. Easy to say, yes. To have to deal with fear, for example. It's a really hard one, I would say. Fear is one of the most fundamental emotions. That's when it's very, very close to self, is fear. You have all these different levels of self, but fear is a very, very primal one. It's right down into the instinctual level of self-preservation, body and mind. But it's a very important area to investigate because, every human being, I think, faces fear at some time or other. It's a normal human reaction. And sometimes it is the fear reaction is a you can say a self-reaction, way down the line somewhere where you have a really complex or really highly developed sense of self. I'm afraid of frogs or something. That's a very kind of practical, why am I afraid of frogs and you aren't afraid of frogs? There's some kind of very deep, very personal history there. But then there's very elemental fear also, existential fear, if you like. That's when it's getting really close to the very source of self. But one can, if the mind is calm enough, there's enough clarity there, you can access it. And I would say the easiest way is through the body. I had my own experience many years ago when I was in England, and I was, I don't know, I was in England maybe a year or so, and then this fear came up, and England's not a frightening place compared to Thailand. I wandered in the jungles of Thailand, I wouldn't say I didn't see any tigers, but I was roaming around the mountains of Thailand and I wasn't frightened. Only once I had a little bit of a ghosty experience. But I still wasn't frightened. Just an experience I couldn't explain rationally. But I don't know what it was, whether a ghost or not. But the Thais see ghosts everywhere. Yeah. But I don't see ghosts, fortunately. I can wander in the forest, not see ghosts. It's not on my radar. So. But I came to England, and it's a very comfortable place, very safe place, and all this fear kept coming up. My first thought usually is to try and think about it. What's the cause of that? What's the cause of that? But in the end, it was just irrational fear, totally irrational. There's no way I can figure it out where it came from, what the source was. And it was nothing really logical to be afraid of. Environment, no snakes around, no tigers. We're out in the countryside. There's very few people around. But anyway, it just kept coming up, and then I didn't know what to do about it. But I noticed that when I came in the evening to our meditation, we had group meditation together. When I came into the meditation hall, it was there, but it was not the same intensity, because there were many of us there. So it was held within this greater field, if you like, somehow. So I kind of brought it up into the meditation room. Rather than me being in my little hut facing my fear one-to-one, here I was in this group of people, about 20 people meditating together, with a Buddha image there, a sacred space or something or other, So the fear was there, but it was not the same intensity. So I tried to open to it and receive it, and it wasn't so bad. It wasn't gone away, but in the right context, it's in the right state of mind, if you like. That's what the practice of metta does. It's the right state of mind, being friendly to it rather than fighting it. Then it was different. So then since I left the meditation room, it was me and the fear again. So it was very intensified. But then I brought it up, in that context, and I saw it was different. It was not a tangible, solid, fixed thing. It was different. It had to do with my relationship to it and my perception of it and all kinds of things. So I could bring it up into the meditation room, and it was all right. It wasn't pleasant, but it was all right. And then I can begin to actually welcome it into the room rather than try and run away from it. And after a while, it got lighter and lighter and lighter and began to just dissipate. So not entirely gone, but I have the experience of holding it in a different space now. So fear is just perfectly normal, So there's no person who identifies with it, who takes it seriously, that I'm frightened, I'm fearful. They're just this fear as sort of a state of mind, a universal state of mind. So we all have it, right? We all have it. Is anybody getting frightened? I shouldn't talk about it. Shouldn't bring it up. At least it's not dark anyway. But some of those, states of mind, we wouldn't normally never go to them. See? Most of us would stay in our comfort zone, as I say. But it's when we're being challenged, it's outside our comfort zone where it starts to get a little bit uncomfortable. Then there's more energy in it. You wake up just because you need some certain degree of alertness to, well, what's happening here? What's going on here? Yeah. And if you can channel it into a skillful state of mind of reflecting upon it, contemplating, maintaining some degree of calm, you can begin to see through it, as it were. It's not a fixed thing. These are just processes that arise and pass away. They have causes and conditions, and ultimately, one of the reflections on no permanent self is ultimately it's basically empty of substance. But we don't see it that way normally. We're always relating to subject object. There's an object there I have to fight with now, try and get the better of. But in ultimate reality, there's no object there. They're just processes, empty processes, coming and going. Empty processes, no object, no subject. No intensified, no solid subject. Easy to say. Usually requires some practice, some development. So speaking of that, time for meditation.